1975, my dad made me my first skateboard. We were broke, and literally there was like a cabinet door that got yanked out of the kitchen of the house we lived in, and he cut out a skateboard out of it, painted it with leftover cabinet paint. It was like lime green, and then took me to the toy stores, sold like unpacked ball bearings. You actually had to pack them and seal them, strips of grip tape, and you could buy trucks and wheels, and he put it all together, and I had a skateboard. I don't even think he thought anything of it. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if I asked him. He did it, and then I kept riding it. My dad was born in Paris. He was an army brat, so he was there from all his brothers and sisters were born like from Frankfurt, Germany, Baltimore, Maryland, Paris, France. My mom was born in West Virginia. She only lived there for a little while, but they both went to high school in Los Angeles, so they met in high school. My grandfather, like I said, was a career military guy. He retired, and when he retired, he moved to Salinas, and so they went that way so that they would have my grandparents around for help with me as a newborn. It's Steinbeck country. It was farm town on the outskirts, and everything that lived inside of Salinas was to service it was either families or migrant farm workers. My dad worked for Soledad Prison, then he wound up transferring to the men's colony, California men's colony in San Luis Obispo. But it was elementary school and junior high, and that's where I first met my first skateboarding friends, So it's like Justin Gerard, who wound up being pro for Mad Circle. So he was a skateboarder, and there was a bunch of other skateboard kids. And in '84, I moved like 2 blocks away from a pseudo-famous vert ramp for Central California called 3rd Street Ramp. And I just started skating that. Like literally drove by it with my parents in a car, saw it, and put my skateboard on like a beach cruiser, and because half the roads were dirt in this little beach town we lived in, and jammed down to the vert ramp, and I skated every single day. I think by '86 I was sponsored and was going on summertime tours, and as soon as my very first trip happened, I never wanted to not travel. Like, didn't want to ever be just in the zip code. And my dad, who's like, grew up as a military kid, he's running a prison, and he's, getting progress reports from a kid who's, coming home with like a, a safety pin jammed through his ear and bleached white hair and leopard spotted hair and, all that. He was like, he loved me for sure, but it was like he didn't get me for sure. And then we had a lot of those, like the same conversations everybody did at that time. Like, you're never going to make a living doing this. What are you doing to get your shit together? You're fucking blowing it. I was really close to my grandfather. He was a full colonel in the Army and in the NSA. So like he was in places and making decisions about some really important shit that happened pre and during World War II and the Korean War. And like, I think he was the way my dad was with me, with him. And by the time I was his grandkid, so he was real gentle with me. So I got a whole different, Robert F. Pope than my dad got. Like there were certain things, if you said you're gonna be there, you need to show up. If you're going to work, you go to work. There's no funny business at all, so it's like, and I've always taken the attitude, it's like, even though I didn't come from a lot, I was afforded a space where I was able to think of myself in that way, that I'm like, if I go for this shit, I can fucking do it. And my mom, she was supportive of art and skateboarding. My dad would be eventually too, but she was from the beginning. She'd even drive me to contests before I was able to do so for myself. So I rode for Small Room, Spitfire when they very first started in Thunder, and before that was on Epic. And before that, got stuff from Madrid because those Madrid guys that came down, they would just, they would literally come down, give you a board and sell you a board at cost out of their trunks, I worked for the original brick and mortar shop CCS when they were first starting the mail order, right, in San Luis Obispo. I was one of the original first 5 team riders, and then they hired me right out of high school. I worked in the shop, helped them start their original private label program, and then I moved to Santa Cruz. was this. I made team manager and Speedwheel's team manager. You know, I'd done stuff for Small Room as a team rider, and Tim P. Marta, who took all the original photos, let me have his camera, and he'd show me how to roll off, you know, bulk film onto film rolls and where to take it to the photo lab so I could start shooting photos for ads, and they'd let me just use the credit card and buy, you know, video equipment and let me book time in an editing studio and stumble my way through, you know, editing some of their better videos from that time period, you know. But I definitely had no business doing it because I didn't have any experience doing it, but I told them I could do it and they believed me, they let me do it, and we did it. I remember being sad at one point, being like, I'm not the skateboarder, I'm not gonna be pro guy with my name on a board. Like, okay, this is the moment when I buckle down and I really focus on marketing and creative production and direction, all these sorts of things. When I was a kid, I used to watch this thing called the Monster Mash on Sundays. They'd play all the old original, you know, Draculas and Wolfmans and Frankensteins, all the Universal and Hammer horror stuff. So I wanted to do something that was themed like that, and did Creature. So there was a whole plan, aesthetics plan to how we're gonna launch it, and I shot everything on film. It was like shadow puppeting in the bathroom, horns over the guys, you know, like with weird lighting and stuff, and everybody was doing frame grabs of gnarly tech tricks on ledges at that point. I even like matched up Pantones from old horror film posters to the board colors, so it was like really different, you know, like the biggest wheels you could get anywhere were like 43s, 44s, 45s. We made 50 millimeter, you know, dual dyed wheels, so they're like 50/50s. Made 9-inch boards and 8.5s when nothing was bigger than like a, you know, 7, 7/8 or 8. There was nobody servicing that crew of folks. You know, I was super into it. We were living it like 24/7, you know. Jason Adams in his prime, Barker Barrett, you know, Darren Navarrete, Dorian Tucker, this guy Ronnie Marshall from Sacramento. We had a just crew of really awesome guys that were like kind of, you know, and so we were in Santa Cruz for like 4 years. And then after that, when I left, I started Scarecrow until we moved to Laguna Beach. I worked for John Lucero Black Label for like 3 years. And then from that, Dust Footwear brought me on to actually prep it for sale. So we wound up getting it to a point where it was profitable, and they sold it, and I left. And I went on to taking a job for 2 years working for Jamie Thomas as the Fallen Footwear and Apparel brand director, which was our big years of when they had like big Fallen videos drop. So those were 2 years there, and Vans saw that and saw what we did with apparel there and asked me to come run their apparel program, because at that point, Vans apparel was just like, it was only being sold Vans retail. They didn't really have a strong wholesale business, and they didn't have any contracts. They were just starting to talk about signature line stuff. Vans was like, hey man, like it's your deal, run with it. And like Paldini actually told me at one point, I took it seriously, like the success or failure of Vans apparel lands squarely upon your shoulder, don't fuck it up. You know, so it's like, and then he was there for me and supported me and gave me budget, and I asked him questions, and we signed, and we did the Joel Tudor line, we did multiple lines for Anthony, a couple contracts while I was there, we signed the G-Boys. And I think the lead into Converse was really Vans. If you're me and I'm, you know, think I'm doing, you know, a decent job, and I think there's opportunity, I have other people telling me they'd like me to come do more for them for more money and, you know, a more advanced role, a more senior role. Took the opportunity to move to Boston, and it was great. It was like it was my master's or my PhD program. I do interview things like often, but it's always based around artwork and sometimes my history in skateboarding, but it's never about desk life, you know, like what's your career, like what might be on your LinkedIn. And I've always thought it's like not very sexy, but it's like there's a lot to talk about in that zone, and like for people who are in that space, it's comfortable for me to talk about it, but usually just talk about working with Louis and the skate team, and got to go to Moscow for a week and make drawings to go along with the article with Monster Children. Yeah, I did that. That was amazing. But I also am the guy who's like, when we come back, like making sure we stay within budget and that everybody's turning in all the bits and pieces they're supposed to, and it falls where it should in the calendar, and that everybody globally releases it the way they're supposed to on the day they're supposed to. And if they don't, we have difficult conversations about it, or you have a conversation that says, thank you so much for doing what you said you were gonna do. I'm that dude that leaves from a fucking balls to the walls crazy job on Friday, and I start Monday at the new gig. I want my calendar filled, I work 7 days a week, I work all day and night, you know, that's just what I'm used to. That's probably what I'll do till I fall over. And they're like, aren't you gonna take a few weeks off? No, I got work to do. And it's like, I gotta keep doing this, and like that's why I'm, you know, like why I'm showing up to my studio on Saturday and Sunday, because if I don't show up to my studio Saturday and Sunday, being the best version of myself in the art space. Somebody else is going to get the art show at Antonio Colombo Gallery in Milan. I'm not going to. Or if I don't, make the very best film, I'm not going to get the budget next year, which means I let all the dudes down, which means I can't re-sign them with contracts that are really meaningful for them and their families. So I'm like, I got to show up and be there and work hard, otherwise all that goes away. So.